On today's Newsmakers, a Duck Dynasty star's conversion, an NBA player takes a stand, and a potential genocide of Christians looms. Welcome to Newsmakers here on the CBN News Channel. This is a show where we go behind the headlines every week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable figures. On today's Newsmakers, we are starting with Duck Dynasty stars Phil and Miss Kay Robertson. We'll discuss Phil's journey of leaving alcohol, chaos, and anger behind to embrace Jesus. We'll also dive into Kay's quest to forgive and their new film, The Blind. Let's welcome the Robertsons to the show. So, Phil, I want to start with you because this movie, The Blind, it tells your story, your family's story. What was it that led you to say, you know what, I want to tell our story through a movie?
I would have never dreamed that up in 1,000 years. So it's all news to me. But I've noticed that when you love God and love your neighbor, and you make known that you follow Jesus Christ, his death, burial, resurrection, that's all I've been saying the last 40 years, 50 years. So whatever comes out of it is what comes out of it.
Well, that's what I love about you guys, because I don't think you probably planned on ever being on a TV show, a hit TV show, ever doing the things that, God has thrown your way. And, Miss Kay, it kind of brings me to you because, this is different from a lot of the things that you guys have done in the past. You've shared your story through interviews. This is with the movies. Other people they're reenacting what you went through. What was it like for you, Miss Kay, to open your life up in that way?
It was pretty hard. And then, as most people know, when I saw it the first time, I cried from start to finish because it was just so real. And they were doing such a great job, playing us. And then it was like reliving the hardest time of your life. And even though you know the end, it's still hard looking at it.
It was embarrassing for me. It just was embarrassing when you tell people your sins. You've already told them to God, he knew them, but then when people say he did what, he was a drunkard and a heathen, it's pretty tough to swallow, especially if someone says, we'll put that on the big screen. I'm like, dude, what?
So, Phil, what do you hope people are going to take away from getting a chance to watch that unfold?
If by watching the movie, if one person is converted to Jesus Christ, understanding his sins, her sins have been removed, and she has the Holy Spirit of God, she's guaranteed to live forever, resurrection from the dead. There's a lot going on, what Jesus has done. And if true, I believe it is, man, it's the only way to travel. All your sins removed, that's big, and you're going to be raised from the dead. My question is, if that's not a great story, what is yours? Does your story beat this one?
Yeah, I don't think so.
If it converts one person, I'm like, hey, rock on. If it converts 1,000, I'm like, rock on.
Well, and being in movies, you can cover a lot of territory like that. More than just us telling people in Louisiana, or where we are. So I think it's a great way to get it out and to just let them see the good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
All there.
Well, and that brings me to a question for you, Miss Kay, because, we've talked in the past about this, and your story has really captivated me because it shows, with Phil and what your family went through, how Jesus changes people's lives. Most people, they know your family from Duck Dynasty and the other projects and books that you've worked on since then. How would you describe Phil? Because, again, people know him as he is now. How would you describe him before finding Jesus?
Hard. He was pretty hard, man. Distrusting. He didn't trust anybody. Didn't trust me. Didn't trust anybody. But it was because he didn't trust himself. I do know that now. But he was very jealous person. And, he just had some devil qualities, I call him. And I would tell the boys, constantly that that's the devil in him. He's a good man, but the devil has got a hold of him. He's living in him right now. And what we want is to pray for God to get him out. And, he can have God in him and Jesus and not act like he does. Because let's face it, when you're controlled by the devil, most of the time you don't know you're doing that. You think you're right, everybody else is wrong. So we knew he was wrong, but we still respected him as the head of the house. We were good to him, but we tried in every way we could to point him to Jesus and to show by our lives, that it's better than the way he was living.
Yeah. Well, and Phil, the movie is going to take people through this story, and I don't want to spoil it at all, but I do want to ask you because, it's so, alcohol, dealing with all the different things, the anger that you were going through before you found Jesus. What do you think it was that led you to that dark place in your life at that time?
Jesus said the evil one is the father of lies and the father of murder. John chapter 10. When I read that and I was looking at, when I heard the gospel, I told the guy that shared the good news with me, I said, let me look at this because it sounds too good to be true. Everything I've ever done wrong will be blotted out, wiped out. And on top of that, I'm guaranteed to be raised from the dead. When I said, I need to check that out because it sounds too good to be true. So he said, whatever. So I took the information he gave me concerning Jesus, and I went through every little thing. His appearing, born of a virgin, his death, his burial, his resurrection. When I looked at that, and then his going back to the Father, he stayed 40 days on the earth after his resurrection. He stayed 40 days to convince all of his followers. You got to remember, all of his disciples, everybody had turned on him. They got out of there. So he brought them all back together. And when I looked at all that, I just put it together and I said, you know what? It sounds too good to be true. But what if it's true? So I looked at it carefully and I said, you know what? I think there's something going on here that I have missed. How I missed it, I do not know. But I didn't start trusting Miss Kay or anybody else until I could trust me as far as you could see me. When I learned that lesson, that's when I began to say, I think there's something to this. So it just sort of unfolded in front of me. Old Big Al, the one that named the duck call up in the duck blind, he said, Robinson, you ought to build that and sell it because that duck call, you can really call ducks in. And he said, yeah, I even have a name for it. I said, what would you call it? And he said, I'd call it, he said, it's the way to go. It's you call ducks, build duck calls. He said, it'll go ballistic. He said, call it, if you want to. He said, because not everybody will understand about ducks. But he said, that's what you ought to call it, the Duck Commander. So I didn't even name the name of the duck call that took off and sold all those duck calls, I would teach them how to call ducks, and then I would tell them about Jesus. And I was down the road. So that's what I did for about 30 years, 35, 40.
And here we are now, this film, The Blind, it comes out September 28th. Phil, what do you want your legacy to be, not just with this film, but with everything in life?
If you read through the text, the Apostle Paul was selected to write most of the New Testament, the Apostle Paul. When he was talking about his own life, he said, I was a blasphemer. I was the worst of sinners that there has ever been. And I'm sitting there reading what he said about himself. He was going out holding people's clothing while they were stoned to death. their kinfolks being stoned to death. He was leading that kind of charge. And that's the type, that's one of the ones that God picked to write most of the New Testament. The Apostle Paul, he said, I was the worst. It made me feel a little better if the Apostle Paul was that sorry and low down and mean, having people murdered. I said, well, I didn't get to that level, but drunkenness and all that, was there. But when I got to looking at it, I said, the Apostle Paul, the worst of sinners, I said, he can forgive me too. So it helped my faith to know God picked somebody who was a sinful man, very sinful for years, but he just stayed the course. God picked him to write most of the New Testament, and the rest is history.
Well, I appreciate you both taking the time. Again, the film is The Blind, coming out September 28th. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
What a powerful testimony of life change, transformation, and what God can do in our lives when we let him. The Blind is in theaters right now. Coming up next, the crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh, a landlocked region between Armenia and Azerbaijan that's heavily populated by Christians, is heating up. We'll be back in just a moment to break it all down for you here on Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Our next segment explores a situation that has some critics warning there could be an impending genocide. Last week, Azerbaijani forces launched an attack on Nagorno-Karabakh just before an announced truce. This follows a 9-month blockade depriving the 120,000 ethnic Armenians living there of basic food, resources, and medicines. We have the disturbing story here on Newsmakers. Videos and images showing thousands of ethnic Armenians trying to flee Nagorno-Karabakh have shocked human rights activists.
This is a recipe for mass atrocities.
Joel Veldkamp of Christian Solidarity International fears the worst is yet to come for the people living in the landlocked region between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Earlier this week, Azerbaijani forces launched an attack just before an announced truce. Uncertainty still abounds, however.
This is being widely reported as a ceasefire. Many journalists, many observers seem to think that this means that the fighting is over, the violence is over, the danger is over. That is not true at all. This is the most dangerous moment right now.
Veldkamp believes abuse, chaos, and violence against the Armenians will continue now that they've basically surrendered.
The government of the Republic of Artsakh surrendered to the invading forces of Azerbaijan. They agreed to disband all of their self-defense forces, to lay down their weapons, and to hold negotiations on quote-unquote reintegration into Azerbaijan.
Veldkamp's main concern is for the 120,000 occupied Armenians still trapped inside Nagorno-Karabakh.
There has been no electricity for most of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh for 43 hours now. That means that people have not been able to charge their cell phones or their computers. People aren't able to communicate about what's happening to them. Azerbaijani troops have occupied the country. They control most of the main roads. There are many, many villages that are cut off from the rest of Nagorno-Karabakh.
For decades, deadly battles have raged between Armenians and Azerbaijanis over the territory. Last December's blockade reignited those tensions, cutting off residents from food, medicine, and other essential resources.
This is an area of Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, that has been contested for many years, largely because when the Soviet Union took over Armenia, it carved it up with Azerbaijan and many of the other countries in strange ways. So there's a little area of Armenia. It has historically been filled with Armenians, Armenian cultures, the Christian faith.
Azerbaijan attacked the region 3 years ago, trying to take it over. Curry sees these latest efforts as an attempt to finish that quest.
They're intensifying this and trying to push out all of the ethnic Armenians and Christians within this region.
Experts now fear Armenia, one of Christianity's oldest communities, could face a second genocide if the international community doesn't act fast.
How could we be so far away from our brothers and sisters? How can we be so ignorant about the first Christian nation, about the first nation in the 20th century to experience a real genocide? What is wrong with us?
Veldkamp is encouraging Christians worldwide to pray and call on Western leaders to intervene and save Armenian lives. Billy Hollowell, CBN News. Be sure to be in prayer for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. We want to be praying for peaceful resolution, and really for those who are in desperate need. Everything has been appended, their homes, their families. They haven't had medicine or food really fully since last December. And so we pray for them. And keep in mind, this is a quick moving situation. If you want to stay on top of it, head over to CBN News. Check out all of the stories there to see what is happening there. And we'll be back in just a moment here on Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, we're going to be diving into a different topic, an interview with NBA star Jonathan Isaac. He recently launched a new brand, a brand that celebrates faith, freedom, and American values. Let's welcome him to the show. All right, so you've got a new endeavor, Unite Us. Tell us about this.
Unite Us is a values-based sports and apparel company. In my opinion, really the first of its time, in a sense that it's about building community, bringing people together. We are living in a time right now, and increasingly so, that it just feels like everything is about demeaning, foundational values, godly values, constitutional values. Everything is about going in the opposite direction. And there's a swell of people that honor these values, that try to live by these values, and feel alienated and disenfranchised about what it is that they believe. And so I feel like something like this is just needed for right now. And I'm excited that we're going to be launching really, really soon. And I can share more about it as we go.
Why, it's interesting, so many brands that have taken these stands, right, that are controversial or that divide people, as we're talking about. What do you think drives that, right? I mean, here you are creating this amazing brand that's going to be sort of a counter, and it's going to speak to what people really care about.
Right.
But why on the other side have there been so many of these stances that just don't even need to be taken sometimes?
I've honestly been asking myself the same question. When you look at some of these corporations, it's like, there seems to be there's nobody asking the question, can you please do this? But there seems to be a kind of innate desire for them to come out and take the stances that they're taking, or share, what it is that they feel is right for them. And I really can't answer that question for you. I really don't know why. But I do understand that there is a level of societal pressure. There is a level of wanting to kind of just, be with, where the times are. And so, at the end of the day, we live in a free country, and these corporations and companies are free to do so.
What do you want to see? They are free, and that's an important thing. They're free to do so, and people are free not to like it. But the cool thing is you are giving this alternative, right? You're creating this alternative. What is your hope at the end of the day for the brand? Like when all is said and done?
Yeah, well, the freedom piece is honestly probably the biggest piece for me. I love the fact that, America is the way that it is, and like we're talking about, these companies and these corporations are free to do what they want to do, barring children, we're out to protect children, things like that. But on an adult basis, they are free to do what they want to do. But we're also free to support what we want to support. And so I'm really intent on diversifying the marketplace and just giving people the freedom of option. I've spoken to countless people and asked them one simple question. If there was a culturally relevant, high quality alternative to your sportswear, your leisure wear, to the clothes that you put on your body, would you switch? Would you change from some of these other corporations or companies? And they said absolutely. And so it's just, for me, it's about creating that community of people that are saying we are encouraged and inspired to live out our values through our clothing, through Unite Us gear, through Unite Us wear. And I just want to build that community, because I feel like I know what it is firsthand to hold to a belief system, to try to live out that belief system, but to feel, scared, to feel fearful about being vocal, to be ostracized, to be faced with hostility about what it is that you believe. But I feel like in creating a community, there's safety. There is, meeting people that are like-minded. You see somebody with Unite Us gear on, you're like, I know that person believes like me or thinks like me in some general sense. And you start to feel emboldened and empowered, and that's what I want to do.
So, final question for you. In 5 years, where do you want to see Unite Us?
Man, in 5 years, I want to see Unitas as a robust community of people that are striving to become better and better every day, striving to embody the values that they want to see represented in our marketplace and culture. I want to see people that have grown. Like I think it is so easy to dunk on the other side or attack the other side for their beliefs, be it as crazy as some of them are. But to just see people the way that, I believe that people should be seen as, kind of for who they are. And you can debate ideas and you can debunk ideas, but, finding a way to choose love over hate, truth at the end of the day over falsehoods, and purpose, like a purpose-filled, person with an agenda over polarization. And so I just want to see a group of people that are coming together, that are knowledgeable, that are growing, and that are sporting really dope, really cool, culturally relevant, fashionable sportswear, leisure wear, hoodies, t-shirts, the whole nine. I want to see, I'm going to be the first signed athlete to the brand. And so I'll be coming out with my own sneaker that I'll be playing in this upcoming season. That'll be through Unitas. I want to see a robust panel of value-aligned athletes from all different sports, be signed to Unitas. Influencers, actors, people, sponsored by Unitas. Colleges, sports teams sponsored by Unitas. Things that we're at right now, like this event, sponsored by Unitas and things like that. I just, I definitely have a big vision for it, but I think it's definitely possible. And if we do it properly, focus on having a quality product, but also focus on doing the work of truly investing in people, investing in communities, being the change that we want to see, I think it can happen.
That is an amazing goal. Appreciate you joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Billy.
If you want more information on that brand, you can head over to weareunitas.com for more on the company and what they have to offer. And we'll be back in just a moment here on Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. That's all for today's Newsmakers. I want to thank you for watching, and be sure to head over to the CBN News YouTube channel. You can get all the full interviews that you saw here on the show today and so much more. We'll see you again next week.